If you're an e-commerce business and have heard about CRO, but don't know where to start, then this video is for you. I've been running conversion optimization programs for over 6 years, and these are the questions I'm getting asked by every single client in the first meeting. So instead of making the same costly mistakes I see businesses making every day, I'm going to answer the most common beginner CRO questions right now. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what CRO is, whether it's right for your business, and the first steps to get started without wasting time or money. So one of the first questions I typically get, before starting to work with a brand, is like, when is actually a good time to start A/B testing? And what I've seen in the last few years is that most brands start way too early or in a way too undirected fashion. And what we typically try to do up front is like assess testing capabilities and calculate testing bandwidth, which has proven to be a really helpful strategic measure to make sure that the brand is actually ready to start A/B testing. And to cut to the chase is like, essentially you need enough traffic to detect meaningful changes in a reasonable time frame, right? We don't want to run A/B tests for 3 to 6 months just to then realize, oh, it's all for nothing, right? We'll get to in a second what an MDE, or actually I can say it right now, it's a minimum detectable effect. And if that one is over 5%, I would already start being somewhat cautious, because for a lot of brands, especially when they're starting out, detecting changes higher than 5% can sometimes be like not so easy, or sometimes it's super easy, but it's more like needle in a haystack kind of thing. So, and when MDE, so the minimal detectable effect, is over 10%, I would typically try to stay away, because for us, it's super hard then to actually make sure that this effect is so high. Obviously, sometimes you're super confident in an idea that you're super sure this will like have a massive effect on the metric you're trying to improve, but it's somewhat unlikely to do that. So basically, and before I get to the next point, what we typically do is like we run what's called a test bandwidth calculation. So you can think of it similar to how you assess bandwidth for your internet speed, right? If you only have like a super old low bandwidth internet access, then it will be hard to stream like super high definition videos in all the rooms of your house. But if you have a super fast internet connection, obviously it depends also on some other factors, you'll be much more likely to stream all the videos in good resolution and without stuttering and anything. So, and it somewhat translates also to A/B testing, right? We generally think of, say, an online shop of having various assets that we can test on, right? For example, a homepage, collection page, product detail pages, cart, checkout, navigation, right? Obviously, if you're on Shopify, testing on checkout has become more difficult or somewhat impossible, but that's a separate topic. But basically we have all these assets, and on most of those pages we have various metrics that we can use to then test on or test with, right? For example, homepage, we can obviously use the purchase conversion rate as a metric, but it's far further in the journey, so some other metrics might make more sense to look at, right? The same goes for collection pages and product detail pages, etc. So it will be quite difficult, for example, for us to detect whether or not a change on a homepage will lead to a meaningful enough effect on the purchase conversion rate. But we can look at something like entry on the collection pages or product pages, right? Or access to those pages. So why am I looking at this? Or why am I telling you this? So sometimes this MDE, which is the smallest detectable effect, the minimum detectable effect that we can detect given the statistical parameters that we use for the calculation here. And I won't go into too much detail. I think I have another video on that either up already or up soon. But basically, if this one is too high, and I've given you a rough framework here, if it's like over 5%, probably be cautious. If it's way higher than 10%, like I'd probably stay away. And also in our calculation here, if it's over 10%, it will already not be in the priority list or in the ranking, and will also be highlighted in yellow, just to put a little extra awareness on that. But you can still look at proxy metrics, right? Or metrics that lead to what you want to improve. For example, instead of testing for purchases with, say, a 19.5 MDE, you could test for add to carts or email signups or whatever it is that is more directly related to the change you're making, right? Without any specific examples, because that would just not make sense here. Just look at what is the change you're making and what is the closest behavior that you're trying to measure, and then look at what kind of KPIs or what metrics do you have that relate to this behavior or to measure this behavior. As a practical rule, if your primary KPI for that test has an MDE higher than 5%, I would typically look for a proxy metric earlier in the funnel. If it's like 5.5%, obviously that doesn't make much of a difference, but still look for different metrics, especially then also in your secondary KPIs. And that will prevent you from running underpowered tests for months, essentially. So the bottom line, don't start A/B testing until you can get reliable results in 4 weeks or less. This is essentially what this entire bandwidth calculation helps you assess. Obviously, you can also put different amounts of weeks here, but for a rough idea, that's that. And also, we've seen sometimes brands, especially when they're super new to A/B testing, they kind of struggle with this. So if you want to take a closer look at this together, we have an introductory call where we can also do something like that together, or you can book an experimentation game plan where we do this and a few other things for you to set your experimentation program off to a good start. But let's get to number 2. Is CRO only for large companies? And it's somewhat easy to assume that because all of the case studies you see from brands like Amazon or Booking.com or Netflix and Google, that sometimes it seems like CRO and experimentation at a larger scale is only reserved for larger companies that have a huge amount of traffic. And my answer to this, and albeit a lot of people say, well, you need incredible amounts of traffic. CRO specifically, I'm not talking about A/B testing in this sense, is not reserved for huge organizations only. And I have, over time, come up with a very interesting angle, actually, that speed beats sophistication, right? Small companies, especially if you're small, can fix obvious problems like a broken mobile checkout or confusing navigation in days. Large organizations typically have a lot of feedback loops and they have to wait for approvals for seemingly fairly small changes, right? And so small companies oftentimes move faster on smaller motions, where big companies actually just struggle to implement and just get stuff done. So speed and focus often trump resources and complexity in CRO. The caveat, and this is now looking more at experimentation or rather A/B testing specifically, obviously is harder with, or sometimes just not possible with limited traffic, right? You would need months to reach statistical significance, at least in a calculated fashion, and or you would have to detect unrealistically large changes, and there's rules that should prevent you from doing that, but maybe that's a topic for a different video. Then again, also in small teams, sometimes you do have like some resource constraints, like with fewer people, smaller budgets, where everything and everybody is competing for priorities. This can slow down CRO efforts, especially if it's something you're trying to layer on top of your existing workload, right? This is something to keep in mind, but shouldn't out of the box, or like shouldn't be like a general reason to prevent you from doing CRO anyway. So then exactly that was where I was going. This shouldn't kill your CRO success, right? You can especially the traffic constraints shouldn't be holding you back from running customer interviews, looking at user recordings, and analytics instead of just waiting for test results if you have insufficient traffic. The bottom line, again, limited testing capabilities do not limit CRO success. Let's get to the next questions. Next question. This is something a lot of brands, especially when they're looking at ROI, want to understand is like, when do we see the first results? And as someone who has run many of these programs, sometimes like end-to-end, sometimes more as a consultant or in sparring roles, it depends, right? But there is a bit of a framework that I do recommend trying out or like using when trying to build a CRO program from the start, or just when you're just starting out. And it's essentially built around doing research while at the same time already deploying quick wins and ideally testing them to start gaining momentum, right? So you do foundational research, you try to understand what the customer problems are, you're trying to gather and get to some core insights that you can then use in the next steps to build a strategy around and run more strategic tests based on strategic opportunities, for which, by the way, I have recorded a full video on how I suggest doing that. But then at the same time, in let's say month 1, you can already start testing quick wins, right? Based on assumptions, based on maybe also things you've seen with direct competitors doing that you're not doing, and never assume that they have tested everything, obviously. That's why you should. But especially just to get the ball rolling, this is typically a good way to get started. And then from month 3, say, you can start testing or like iterate on the first results you've been getting and run more of those strategic tests, as well as try out new directions, right? This then goes a bit more or deeper into how to build an experimentation strategy, and especially how to keep that momentum going. But yeah, what you want to do initially is just like front load that initial research, gain feedback from these A/B tests, and keep building momentum. I can highly recommend checking out this video. It was one of the first videos I was doing here on YouTube, so it will look slightly different, but the concepts behind it should still apply, or do still apply, so definitely worth checking out. Now, this question iterates a bit more. This is number 4 on whether or not CRO is worth it with small traffic. And once again, I just do want to reiterate on a few points that didn't make sense up here, but or go a bit deeper, is that one, when we look at CRO and small traffic, it is possible, and I want to highlight here as well that it just doesn't stop at just running A/B tests and looking at huge like revenue gains, but actually making sure that you're solving customer problems, improve user experience, and that you're also learning to do research. Because what's so easy to get wrong is that you just start A/B testing, right? Running some random tests and never base them on real insights. And by the way, an insight is not just, hey, our conversion rate is low. That's not an insight, but rather look at real customer problems that come up from doing, behavior research and other things. And some tools and like methods you can use are like heat maps, session recordings, and just also keep an open mind when you're looking at these things, right? Don't just look at, where are people like clicking on a certain like button and then assume that's if you solve that or somehow improve that will solve all your problems. But no, keep an open mind and try to understand what are people struggling with, and also build some kind of analysis fantasy. And we'll soon have a workshop that goes a bit more in depth on this. But these are a few ideas. Like look at GA4 or whatever other analytics tools you have. Look at voice of customer data. This could include like raw reviews you have on your shop, or if you're selling also on Amazon. This could also involve other first-party data, for example, from customer support, or you run some on-site or on-page surveys. And additional or adding to that, what I also recommend is checking out sites like goodui.org. I'll open that up quickly, is where you can improve your eye with winning and losing A/B tests. So for example, if you do not have the traffic to run A/B tests just yet, there is a multitude of companies who like openly and freely share, or more or less, I think there's a paid subscription here, but still you can get an idea of what other people have tested and what the outcomes were. So you can either go ahead and test that as well, Or again, if you do not have the traffic, at least have some kind of confidence in that these things have worked for other companies and not just guess because these things are still live on their site. So I do highly recommend checking out Good UI, and yeah, I think you can also somewhere buy their plans. It's fairly inexpensive, especially if you're trying to build a program and just have to start from somewhere, right? And then because this is CRO worth it, even with small traffic, well, I think I went already into some detail there, but if you want to understand if you have enough traffic, again, do the bandwidth calculation, and again, we can also help with that. But we can also look together at, or you can do it actually on our site yourself. If you go on there is like a calculator for revenue potential. Obviously, it's based on some assumptions, and it's not a guarantee that you'll hit that, but it gives you a rough idea of what you can expect. Like, one, how many tests you might be able to run, and then if you make a few assumptions, how much additional revenue per year this might add. Obviously, this is just a super rough estimation, but could give you a bit of an idea if it's worth it, especially when you're looking into investment. If you are interested in doing that together with us, we can provide a more comprehensive and typically realistic estimation for you. But yeah, that's something we can work on or look at together if you book a call and you're actually interested in working together. But yeah, that's a free tool out there on our website. Just check it out. So why invest in CRO instead of just running more ads? And I mean, to me, that was pretty obvious for most of the time. But since I get this question still quite a lot, I just want to take a quick a few minutes or seconds at least to answer that question. And to me, it's pretty simple, right? The more customers you convert with a given budget, the more efficient your marketing is. So take, just for example's sake, a budget you run ads for 1,000 euros, and you convert, say, 100 customers. So you have 100 customers coming, like a 10% conversion rate from your ads. Obviously, you have some people not even going to the site, so your conversion rate will be slightly different. But imagine just turning, instead of 10 customers, turning 12 of those 100 visitors into customers. All of a sudden, your return on ad spend is like much higher than not doing that. And this is typically also the kind of reasoning behind why just running more ads typically won't scale as well or at all, compared to also optimizing your landing pages and optimizing your entire customer journey outside of the ads. Also, one thing I want to add here is that the effect of diminishing returns, right? Assuming that just spending more will give you the same constant effects, like a stable conversion rate. So if you go from spending 1,000 euros to 10,000 euros and you expect the same kind of stable conversion rate just because you increased traffic, although that also will likely diminish, then if you don't adjust any other things, then your conversion rate will over time also go like lower, and the chance that you can get any learnings out of that is like almost zero, and you have no idea on how to counteract. Hence, doing conversion rate optimization is a tool for you to better understand what is currently working, what is not, and then also having means to counteract. That said, it can also make sense for you to use ads to experiment, right? Because sometimes you just do not have enough traffic yet, but you still want to understand what kind of hooks, what kind of messaging works. Ads can be a really, really good and also sometimes cost-effective way to do that, instead of running maybe somewhat costly surveys or other things, right? I hope that was a good or somewhat good shot at explaining this idea. If you have more questions, just feel free to comment down below, and I'll try to answer that maybe in a bit better detail. So also one of the questions, I get fairly frequently, not just with people who want to work with us, but generally, is like, how does a CRO process look? And or how does CRO process work? And obviously it's pretty simple, right? You create it, you have an idea, you test it, and then you iterate, right? That's the rough idea. You have this circle, but obviously there are crazy amounts of steps that can be in between. So for example, what we typically look at is like we start with insights. They might either come from research or from previous experiments. From these insights, we might create ideas, we will prioritize them, create proper hypotheses, and then depending obviously on complexity of your organization, we might need legal approval, we might need design, development, 1, 2, 3 rounds of quality assurance. We will likely do a pre-test analysis just to also understand like when can we conclude an experiment. While the test then is running, we might do monitoring, or not might, we would do monitoring. We would then, once the test is concluded, and analyze the test. If we can draw any learnings from it, we will document the learnings, ideally then funnel them back into the insights. And obviously make the decisions, do the reporting results. And as you can see, there's kind of like a circle here, like a, not flywheel, but like a process that is iterative, right? And yeah, that's the basic idea of CRO and A/B testing, to be able to iterate on ideas and not just like try something once and either it works or not, but we can actually do the analysis, draw learnings from things, create new insights, and also update our assumptions, right? So that's the basic idea of the A/B testing CRO life cycle. If you have obviously more questions, feel free to comment down below. Then this is more of a qualifying questions that we typically get. Is like, what does a collaboration with an agency consultancy look like? Are there any alternatives? And personally, I'm a huge proponent of not just looking at, hey, we want to do CRO and agencies are the only option, because they're not, right? And this is me actually from an agency consultancy perspective, but one where we also try to build in-house teams, especially when we think they're ready to just do way more than the capacity of an agency ever could, right? And I will just link to 2 posts that I wrote about this. One is about, are you outsourcing your competitive advantage? And let me see if this is the right post. I hope it is. Yeah, so I looked at a few levels of how experimentation and A/B testing can be done in an organization, and it goes from level 1, which is completely agency owned, so end-to-end research, implementation, everything. And then more agency supported on level 2, and then level 5 is complete in-house, where the internal teams own the entire process and are essentially also able to do everything themselves. There are steps in between, like supported in-house, consulted in-house. But yeah, I think not every setup is right for every company, or there's not one setup that's perfect for every company. But and you can also evolve through, and sometimes also do some steps back, especially if you have some resource constraints that come up. So yeah, that's typically how collaboration with an agency or with a consultancy, or sometimes even a freelancer, can look like. And also one thing I would recommend doing, basically a video that goes through the process of how to assess capabilities and strategically align an experimentation program, whether you're at any of these stages of an agency or consultancy supported model, or if you do everything in-house, right? Go check that out. Yeah, and then one of the things, maybe I should have put that more at the beginning, but what are the biggest mistakes beginners make with CRO? And I'm just going to quickly run through them because I just simply think there's not enough time to go through all of them in detail. But basically, number 1 is, you've probably heard this many times, but is like testing without hypotheses and harking. And harking, maybe you haven't heard about, but it's basically an abbreviation for hypothesizing after results are known. And this means if you only create a hypothesis of why the results might look the way they do, then you're essentially like missing the point of experimenting, right? You want to start with a hypothesis, an assumption of how things are look like, and then validate them, or actually the other way around, also test your assumptions is probably the better way. Then the next one is stopping way too early. So maybe you're running a test for 3 days and your like conversion rate is up by 3%. You're like, yay, let's stop it and do the next test and implement it directly. There is a reason why we do have statistics, why we do use statistics to make better decisions. Doing this, like stopping tests too early due to apparent trends, is just a way to make mistakes. So use statistics, and even though sometimes it might seem boring, this is your fail-safe, right? Another thing is like focusing only on conversion rate and not things like revenue per visitor or other metrics that that make sense for your organization or the specific use case you have. And obviously the CRO is called conversion rate optimization. So it's seems like conversion rate is the thing for you to focus on, but it's more of a overarching term. There are way more metrics than conversion rate that make sense on an individual use case. Then number 4, running complex tests without solid basic optimizations. If you have a shop and you're missing super basic things, or you have a lot of things just going wrong, technical errors, for most small shops, it doesn't make sense to test every single thing or run way too complex tests, where it just might make sense to do more basic things first. And yeah, so I do recommend also just creating solid foundations first, and then going ahead and do A/B testing also based on research, right? Rather than trying to optimize some basics. And the 5th thing, and this is also partially because I'm super invested in documenting learnings for like building repositories for learnings and experiments, but please do me the favor in whatever fashion or in whatever way you want to do it, but it's like document learnings as early as possible, because this is like part of the building compounding momentum of building compounding asset for your company, for your experimentation and optimization program. And it's just super essential, because if you don't document a learning or might just share it in a Slack channel, which is already better than not documenting it, but it will get lost over time and it's super hard to reference. And yeah, the learning should be documented, period. So number 10 is more of a, how to say it, more of a thing some customers that don't really believe in user research tell me, is like, oh, we do know our customers well. And often this is actually the case with owner-operated businesses, where the owner is super close to customers, or yeah, just still heavily involved in day-to-day operations, where maybe they've run the business for 15 years, and they're like, hey, I do know my customers, I know what they want. That might be true, but this still shouldn't prevent you or keep you from still doing user research and also validating your assumptions, right? One, there is a difference between what customers say and what they actually do, especially in, I'll call it a black box for now, your online shop, especially if you're not researching behavior, etc. And then there is obviously also an internal bias that is being built over time through experience, etc. So if you have a way to validate your assumptions and also step aside for a second and look at how things are in reality, that is actually a competitive advantage over other competitors that are doing it exactly that way. And yeah, user research, A/B testing are ways to do that. 11 is, how do you integrate external consulting into existing teams and processes? And I want to add something to this, which came to me after I wrote this, which is, it is not about how to integrate external consulting into your existing teams. The question is rather, how do you get your existing teams and processes to improve over time? And especially when you're like working in a company, sometimes it is super hard to get the ball rolling or to make changes, especially when you're stuck with how things are going. So sometimes getting some external help to do that is the way to go, or at least to have a means of consulting with someone on other experiences who or like with people who have experiences from other companies, right? So typically when working with clients, we try to collaborate with marketing, development, design teams, product teams, etc. Instead of doing a disruptive takeover, which unfortunately some agencies, consultancies are doing, we try to work more in a sparring sessions. This could be weekly sparring sessions, but anything that actually takes you to the next steps, the next level of your experimentation maturity, that helps you make progress, and then over time build internal CRO and experimentation capabilities, competencies, parallel to getting the current support that you need. I've described, I think this is the video I showed earlier, I've described this process and how we do that, this still shot here, in this video, and I can just highly recommend you actually check it out. It's a 20-minute video, so it's not too long, but should give you a good idea of how to do that. And obviously, if you want some help with these exact things, taking your existing teams from more ad hoc, not strategically aligned CRO and experimentation efforts to super aligned or teams and processes and program, then let me know, and you can just book a call. And yeah, here you have it. These were the 10 most asked questions that typically only my consulting clients get, that I'm getting asked almost every single time in one of the first calls. Of course, there's only so much I can cover in a single video, especially when it comes to individual strategies that work for your business. That's why I created the free CRO potential analysis that shows you how much revenue you could generate with the right CRO strategies. Just click the video link down in the description below and find out if CRO can be the next growth lever for your business. See you next time.